Welcome to What's Important to You, a podcast about purpose, passion, and the things that truly matter. I'm James Dean, life coach and host, and each week I sit down with inspiring guests from all walks of life and ask one powerful question: what's important to you? Their stories will spark reflection, fuel your goals, and remind you what really matters, so you can move forward with clarity and momentum. In today's episode, I'm joined by a systemic and transition coach whose work is all about helping people reconnect with themselves in a deep and meaningful way. She brings a grounded, compassionate approach, one that sees the whole person, not someone who needs fixing. We explore themes like wholeness, identity, and right-sizing, and how powerful things can happen when we stop forcing ourselves to fit and start trusting who we are. This is a conversation filled with insight, reflection, and the kind of wisdom that gently challenges your perspective. Today, we find out what's important to Norma O'Kelly. Hi Norma, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, James, for having me. And it's a perfect day for a podcast recording.
It sure is. The rain is back and back with a vengeance, absolutely. So really looking forward to this, Norma. So we're going to kick off straight away. As always, the first question on the show is, Norma, what's important to you?
Thanks so much, James. So when I was listening to some of your previous guests, I think it's really hard to put it into one answer. So I'm sure this will take us on a journey. But I think of recent years, the most important thing to me is this theory of wholeness, and the theory that and a living theory. Some theories are very abstract, but this one is very real to me. And I'll start with myself, in that I am resourced, I am whole. Even when I feel off, I'm not broken. I don't need to be fixed. I don't need to be rescued. That I have everything within me to, whether it's enjoy or get through or be with something, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, that the starting point is this idea that I'm whole. And then I go to the other. So, and the other person where I see you, James, is I see all of you. I see all that you are carrying and all that you are capable of. So it's this idea that you have come from all these systems in your past, whether it is your family, your schooling, your ability to move countries and be resilient. I see all of that. And those systems resource you for what you have right now and what you want in the future. And it's a beautiful starting point. It's you're not broken, you don't need to be fixed. And I think in the work that you and I do, and in the age of social media, where everyone wants to give you a name of a disorder or something, that it is an insult to the person, because it doesn't show what they're capable of. So this systemic coaching has really opened up a whole new way of seeing the world, actually. And it's not to sugarcoat, it's to absolutely acknowledge what is. If the person has had, a lot of suffering in their life, it's recognizing that they have gone through something, and how helping them, disentangle from some of that to allow them to restore this wholeness idea within themselves. So nature is the perfect example. We see nature, despite humans' ability to try and destroy it, its ability to regenerate all the time. And I see it particularly, I'm a country girl who lives in an urban space, and you'll always see nature really, really pushing through. Even a weed will come up in the middle of a road, on a main road like that has thousands of cars passing through it every day. So we are the same. We are nature, and we have the ability to regenerate all the time if we are resourced. And most of the time when people come to you and I, it's not, again, that they're broken or flawed, it's that they have forgotten many of their resources. And I think sometimes as well, resourcing is often confused as a doing, when sometimes it can be a remembering. It could be a remembering of a grandparent. It could be a remembering of that sibling that might have never made it, that never got to be alive, and thinking about how they would view you and what they would say to you. So I think a lot of people start with, oh, but sure, I go to the gym, and absolutely, it's a great resource. It's a dopamine thing. Like swim in the sea all the time, all of that. But resourcing is, it's a much deeper thing. So yeah, so that's what's
Yeah.
important to me.
No, 100% no. And it's, as soon as you said the word again, wholeness, because it made me think of so many things, and you explained it so well. But again, if we think of the first thing that came to my mind, in the sense of when you mentioned about the age of social media, internet, and we're in a sort of an industry, obviously, where we're looking to work with people and help people. And that idea of that the people that you're looking to work with and help, as you say, we're not broken. We're not there to mend or fix or anything. But there's obviously the cynical side of marketing, if I want to put it that way, and what you're told and things like that. It's like, no, you got to poke them, you got to find the pain, you got to find the sort of thing inside of it, so it's almost to imply someone is broken and I'm the one that can fix you. Whereas, as you say, like, I like the way you put it in a sense of, even when you said about resourcefulness, using the word as maybe it's not finding something else that I need to have, it's a remembrance. That's a really interesting and different way of thinking about it, because it's that sort of allowing someone to go, well, actually, when were you like this, or when did you have this before?
Yeah.
So I'd love to know more then, in the sense of, because that word that you said about yourself, about wholeness, is that something that's new? Has it always been there? How did that sort of manifest itself for yourself?
I think it came much later in life, but I think I always had a knowing. I'm not sure about you, but when I stepped into even my first wave of coach training, I think I might have been the year before you, in Irish Life Coach Institute, and it was a room that I was like, I just sat into the chair of, oh my God, this is who I've always been, and I get to be this person now. And that's a dangerous place too, because we confuse who we are versus what we do. But there was a sense of a knowing. I had a challenging kind of 20s, I would say. I was diagnosed with aggressive endometriosis in my late 20s, through having a really, really, really emergency surgery. And I think that was the start of, I did think I was broken. Excuse me. I'm just going to take
Yeah.
some tea.
Yeah.
I did think I was broken. I did think I was beyond repair. I thought I was told at 28 I couldn't have children. So I really got overly attached to that story and was told, kind of like, what was my role in society? Because in my mind, legacy and who I got to be was being a mother was the most important thing. Like, I was that teen that babysat every kid in the village, I loved babies. I loved kids. I always thought I would have children. It was like somebody took the wind from my sail, at 28, to be told I couldn't have children. For those years that came after that, and I had 6 surgeries in total, but I kind of 3 subsequent surgeries, kind of late 20s, early 30s. And I really, really, really over-indexed on the broken, and I over-indexed on the label that I had endometriosis. And I overly identified with that. And I think I remember walking into a room full of other women that suffered, and I remember thinking, oh, no, 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 no. I actually feel too well to be in this room. I was still in a lot of pain, but I mentally was really starting to resource myself and who I was beyond the condition. Don't like it was a disease as well,
Yeah.
the word, but like all osis, like endometriosis or any of the osis disease, it's an inflammation, like, so it's the body telling you
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So I think I think I was focused on my symptoms as opposed to what was going on. And then towards the early 30s, I discovered Reiki and energy, and that was kind of the start of and all energy disciplines is all about restoration of wholeness. It's all about restoration and regeneration. And I suppose because those early years, I always went to other people to fix me,
Yeah.
anything from, acupuncture to a medium to you name it. Like I went everywhere to be fixed because I was this broken soul. And it was all my main number one focus was have a baby, like meet a man, have a baby. Like that was I was tunnel visioned on that one thing. And it wasn't until much later that it was like, ooh, there's something way deeper than why I got, sick in the first place. Um, and unknowns to myself, I didn't know it at the time, but I was resourcing myself. And I think Reiki was a great one because it was that idea that I could heal myself. Yeah, and
Mm.
actually, I have a friend who's also works in energy, and we don't like even the word healing anymore. We want to say holing, but it sounds a bit dirty, so we don't say that one anymore. But that idea that I could actually restore and regenerate myself. And that was really powerful because it was around stepping back into my own power. So that
Mm.
all came before I went and became and trained as a coach. Like it was all brewing up to that point. So I suppose there was that identity thing of like, oh, I'm remembering who I actually really why I came here in the first place.
Mm.
Like, it was this purposeful journey that when I stepped into coaching. And then fast forward the years that I was, I suppose playing around with kind of early paradigms of coaching to finding systemic coaching then kind of in the last 3.5, 4 years ago, and then going, okay. Because the great thing about systemic coaching is like, oh, let's take the Reiki, let's take the illnesses you've had, let's take the who you were in your family, who you were in school, who you were in all your workplaces, and let's include it all. So we're not going to
Okay.
exclude anything else. And I was like, oh my God, I can be seen for all of me and not just the parts that, yeah, I don't know about you, but in my traditional coaching training, it was like, oh, forget about that part of you, like focus on this. Um,
Yeah.
Something like the grow model, it's really
Yep.
basic, and
Yeah.
it's a great entry point, but it doesn't capture the
Yeah.
essence of the wider you're coaching to a goal as opposed to the person. I'm all about the person in front of me. And actually, when I resource myself really, really well, I can see even more of you and I
Yeah.
can see all of you. And in systemic coaching, you said about earlier about being helpful. In systemic coaching, we talk about being useful versus
Yes.
being helpful.
Love that.
Because if we're in the work of helping, we're it's an insult to them.
Yeah.
We're doing them a disservice. So yeah, systemic coaching is this idea of I'd rather be useful than helpful. Um,
Yeah.
and that's big because I was the helper at home.
Yeah, it is, and
Mm.
it might sound like almost semantics, but there is a difference, and it's a huge difference, and it's like it's the subtle, it's more subtle than you think to sort of from being helpful to useful, because helpful is the sort of coming in and someone just doing and almost, oh, there, you're done, I've helped you, versus the useful is that being that sort of mirror, conduit, whatever, to then enable the
Yeah,
person to do it themselves.
exactly. And it's also this I'm walking beside you. I'm not ahead of you. I'm not behind you. At the core, we're both actually the same. We have the same
Mm.
essence. We're made of the same things. We've had different life experiences that have shaped us. But at the core, we have the synchronicity and the coherence of our hearts together. So it's again in traditional coaching it looks at like the dance, like
Mm.
get into the dance. Systemic coaching would definitely echo some of that as well.
Yeah.
Um, but I've been really reminded in the last few days because old habits die hard as well, right? So
Mm.
I was the second child. My mum did have three babies after me that didn't live, but I'm one of five, but I was the only living girl. And so the role I played in the family was the good girl, the helper. Um, I helped my mother unknowingly through a period of grief. Big grief. She lost her mother while I was in utero. She lost these three children after me. She had lost her dad at 16. So she was somebody going through a lot of grief unknowingly. And I wanted to be the good girl to help through it energetically. I was bowed as well, don't get me wrong. I wasn't the perfect child, far from it, but I automatically I assumed that role, and I assumed that role for a long time. So even now, even though I knowingly know to be useful, where it bleeds into me is in friendships and in family. I am better. I have cleaner lines as a coach to be useful, because it's contractual and it's,
Yeah.
there's, I'm very ethical, I would say. I would be really, really
Yeah.
strong on my ethics. But where it becomes more problematic is, yeah, I still want to be the helper to my friends or to my family.
Sure.
So I have to work really hard on
Yeah.
resourcing myself to be like, no. And there's the dance actually in systemic coaching is leaning back.
Yeah.
So because you
Yeah.
see more, but actually I am all in when I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in this with you, James. I'm in it. And
Yeah.
that's the personality type. So what's my personality and what's my uniqueness that I can kind of sit back and go, wow, I can see so much more of James if I sit back,
Yeah.
and myself actually,
Yeah.
the leaning
Well,
back.
it's funny because we can all obviously fall into those habits of who we are, and through sort of obviously doing the show and having conversations, and I suppose through coaching, obviously, and then through my previous or professional life, I was always in a sort of customer service role. So talking to people is a kind of just, or listening to people. But then when you talk to so many people so many of the time, you get to a point where you can almost predict what they're going to say without sort of with pretty good accuracy. My thing is what coaching has taught me, and then I'm contradicting because I'm talking now on the show though, but is to be quiet, because I almost can think the 99% that I'm going to say what they're going to say, but it's not for me to say it. And it's that learning to actually not say the word, and because they could say something completely different, even, and if they say it, they're going to say it in a different way. It's going to have a different meaning, different context. So my thing is like that thing of that I noticed is the moments to be quiet and to stop and allow people to say it in their own way, because that would be me the flipping into the helping, because I think, well, I thinking I'm 10 steps ahead, I've got to sort it. It's like, no, you have to just stop.
It's
That's a big thing.
yeah, that's have you read any of Nancy Klein's work?
I haven't actually, no.
Time to Think. It's
Okay.
a lot of coaches I've worked with in the UK have done it. She has two books. Her second one actually is really worth listening to, and it's, yeah, Time to Think. And again, it really works really well with systemic coaching, and it's, when we're dropping into that solution for the client, um, that it's allowing that moment that we don't have to. And how that plays out in systemic coaching is this idea of constellating. So you're mapping with the client.
Mm,
You're showing a living map of where they're at, and that already takes a lot of pressure off you, because they're going to map their own personal reality and what they need, and you can't fucking know what they're going to do next. It's like, it's not chess. Like, it is like chess in another way. Like, it's so unpredictable.
yeah.
Um, but the focus is the map as opposed to the client. And
Mm,
it's really, I do it online, I do it in person, but allows everyone to drop into a place that they mightn't necessarily do otherwise. And it allows for that leaning back. In fact, I often get my clients, both of us, stand up, even when we're on our laptops, and actually take a step back to see their map at a distance, because they'll notice. And when we're in person, I ask them to move around the other side of the table from my perspective, or stand over it, because direction is really important, as we know in coaching. And sometimes they're only seeing one direction when they're facing something, and they're not seeing it from other perspectives. So that's wholeness as well. And it's these gentle moves. We call them a step to better, actually, again, in systemic coaching, that it's that idea towards the end of the session, they're making these steps to better that, again, they're not you. You don't know where they're going to go. Like,
mm,
you don't know where they're going to go. And their step to better, what they'll often do is move everybody else and bar themselves. So the most important thing is that they move themselves, and then they can move the other pieces around them. But this whole idea is so often that the person in front of us, we have, when we're in the helper, the rescuer, in the drama triangle, we've made the victims and the persecutors way more important. And then this comes into this idea of sizing. So we are often incorrectly sized. So I was incorrectly sized in my family, even though I was the youngest. And my sister Julie really was the youngest. She was the last baby that my mother had. I I played a bigger role in the family because so I was incorrectly sized from a very young age. So when we're in the role of helper, we think we can take on the world because we
Mm.
played a bigger role than we should have. So a move in systemic coaching is this idea of right sizing ourselves, and
Interesting.
say my brother, who was the older, he was the bigger one, I'm the little one. The parents, they're the big ones, I'm the little one. My grandparents, they're the bigger one again, and my parents were the little ones. So it's all this, or it's called orders of belonging. And it comes from family constellations, which is the derivative of what I studied in organizational systemic constellations. And this idea of when we are right sized for where we are meant to be at, um, again, energy will flow, the regeneration, the wholeness will be restored. If we're playing too big, or equally, we can be playing too small.
Mm.
So in even in our own businesses, even being
Yeah.
self-employed,
Yeah.
where we play too small, we don't step into our authority. That's a big one for my clients, not stepping into their authority, because that was my own as
Yeah.
well. But it's the idea that if we're not correctly sized in a system, the system will size us for ourselves.
Mm.
So the system will restore order always.
Yes. Yes.
Like we don't even need to even sometimes intervene, even though we do, because we get burnt out. So often the one
Yeah.
that's incorrectly sized gets burnt out a lot because they're oversizing up mostly, or they're downsizing themselves in a work context, and then they are the doer and the seer and the everything in the
Yeah.
family, and then they come into work and they feel really small, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So they're incorrectly sized in all their systems actually, and burnout then
Yeah.
is because they've overgiven, they haven't received.
Yeah.
I'll go on and
Yeah.
on.
Well, no, yeah, because I'm sure when people will listen to this and they're talking about the family, because I was like, I'd not heard of that before, and I'll be honest with you. And then as soon as you say it, it's that classic thing now of even though I'm, into my 40s, if I go home and say for all of my, I'm one of five as well. It's very rare because we're all over the place and things like that. But if we're all in together, the almost pull to switch back to those roles you had when you were a child is almost like wow. So like I'll give you a silly example. We'll say like I've been in Ireland now for 20 years this year. So I only ever lived in, people know my story, I ever lived in the UK for 3 years of university and 1 year after that because I was born in Germany. I grew up on a military base. So I do not
Right.
know the UK. It's not my
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Even though my mum is still over there, my siblings still live there. I don't know the UK really, even despite the accent.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So, but if I go home, I'm the one. Oh, will you call the takeaway? I was like, because I did it when I was 15. It's like, but what are you talking? I don't know any. I'm not local to anywhere. But it's a silly example. But it's that sort of role that you did all those years ago is the sort of when the dynamic comes back together.
Yeah,
You,
and where the dynamic is always at play, you were probably that person in the office as well.
yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Percent. And so you kind of, it's a really interesting thing when you talk about it, and it's, um, yeah, it's. I'm sure there's lots of people when they listen, they're going, "God, Jesus, why I'm that person? I do this and that, or
Yeah,
I'm the
and
one
you'll find
that's."
it as coaches, right? And I know
Mm,
a lot of people, a lot of your listeners are coaches as well by the nature
mm,
of what we do. So yes, we checking who we have been in our lives, and also like who you were in schools, and the big thing that already would struck me, and I feel it in my heart, is that sense of belonging. Where am I really
mm,
from? And then that also plays again in our order when I go back to the home, like my sense of belonging.
Mm,
is really, really big. So belonging is a huge thing in the systemic world, but your place. So your place,
mm,
where am I placed now that I'm the one who's away and you're all the ones that are here? And how do you resource yourself for belonging all the time wherever you are?
mm.
And the belonging will come from an inner feeling, but
Yeah.
place is important. So the environment is important. Um, but I can feel that in you, that of like that whole like what, like the confusion of I'm back in this role. Like what's that about? What is that about?
It's just it's mad. Like it is funny, and it's like, well, you've all done this while for every other time of the year. Like
When
you
I'm
can't.
not
It's
here.
when I'm not here. Yeah, it's hilarious. The other thing that's striking me when you're talking about the systemic coaching, and again, before talking to yourself, it's not something of a world that I would, in that regard, know of as such. But it reminded me, and I actually did I shared a post about this recently. I was remembering. There was a sort of a mentor I had when in my previous sort of role or life in the financial services, when I was asking him just some questions about next steps or moving forward. I was kind of in the coaching space and was looking to transition. And he was a qualified coach himself. And he said this thing to me. He's like, oh, I see James, the work guy. I do triathlon stuff. I see the triathlete and the runner. I see the coach and I see this. And he's like, but you're compartmentalizing yourself. He's like, you're putting yourself into all these boxes. I just want the one person. And that's when you were talking about the wholeness and the systemic coaching thing, is this, because I don't know if we do it for ease, if we do it like, and you were saying about the sort of, well, I played this, I'm oversized at home, but I'm undersized in work, or,
Yeah, yeah,
this compensation. And from what you're sounding at, it's like trying to bring it all back into the one.
yeah. And a great way to do that, James, is like is I know it sounds random, but all those things, right? So that like are like your running is both I'm like and who you are in sports, because I know that like there's an income as well. So like parts of it is a hobby, part of it is work. So we see it as a peacock's tail in the person.
Mm,
So and all the eyes of the peacock's tail actually represent all the systems you've ever been in. So James the son, James the coach, James the runner, James and all of that. So they're accessing some of your resources. So it's not that each of them are a resource, each of them are a system, but within those systems are the resources and the entanglements.
mm.
So it's I'm not making you to be a peacock, James. I will say that, but
No,
it's
no,
it's a real strong visual clue
it
of kind of
is.
bringing it all back in of like and actually the deeper and the longer that you and I are coaching, it is less about the doing and more about who we truly are actually.
Mm,
Um because at the very essence of you, who is James when he shows up in all these places?
mm,
Because there's somebody who genuinely cares, who cares for your own performance, but also the performance of the person in front of you. Um so
yeah,
yeah, it is deeper soul work, but it
yeah,
is a great way of bringing everything back in as one.
yeah,
And we feel fragmented all the time
yeah,
because, as you say, it's really easy to go, and what do you do, James? As opposed to nobody's going to ask you, who are you today, James?
yeah, yeah,
Nobody's going to
absolutely.
give two shits about you in that
Yeah,
context. So I think, and even it's for everyone in the Western world, but it's even more so for men. What do you do,
yes,
James? And
yes,
that's where retirement becomes such an identity thing. But we love to put people in a box.
yes.
Like you and I'm sure in our businesses, like we learn elevator pitches, and it depends on the room where I can say systemic coach because it opens up a whole like what is that, which is
Mm,
good. But there's other people who just gloss over. So I will say I'm a transition coach or a life
mm,
coach. Um,
mm.
even though I was in corporate for 22 years and
Yeah,
I am an executive coach. What is an
yeah,
executive coach? Hello.
yeah,
Like all these
yeah,
titles, but we're not doing it for us.
yes,
We're doing it to allow the other to see something in us that resonates. So
yeah,
resonance is a big thing. So
yes.
we're in systemic theory as well. We're always working for resonance.
Mm,
So we are helping the other to understand a little bit. small part of us that will help them go, oh, I understand now, because I know I've heard about life coaching, or I've heard about triathlons.
Yeah.
So they already can help that coherence piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the system. So we allow for that, because yeah, it's not every room I can kick down and go, hey, I'm a systemic coach. They're like, yeah, what else?
Yeah. And I'm interested in the sense of, because you say, it's with the systemic coaching, is that something that you moved then into and you discovered yourself then?
Yeah, so it's great because I can still lean on all my other disciplines that I've ever, even including 22 years of marketing, which is great.
Yeah.
So and now I'm really combining actually that with this. So yeah, after discovering it, and how I discovered it was I was going back to I want to have a baby, and my mum subsequently passed, and that's a whole other story that I've spoken openly about. And after her passing, I was like, okay, I think I do really want to go and have a baby on my own. And I worked with a coach who had done some of this training, and she had helped me map out what would my resources be without my mother being there, because she was such a huge resource for me in that decision. And at the time, I got it I felt really good in my body. It was really, really different. And then loads of things happened and I didn't go ahead. But it opened up this whole world for me, and I was really intrigued. And while I was still in corporate like you, I was coaching on the side, but I was starting to go like, I just want to go and do this full time now. I went and retrained both in Ireland. I did 3 courses, on 2 in person, 1 online, and then last year I went to the UK and did my practitioner, which is kind of the next level up. A
Yeah.
lot of coaches in Ireland get to do the first few in Ireland, and then a few of us kind of go on, keep going. So yeah, so that's been my path. So I did the practitioner in both Norfolk and London last year, actually, around this time of year. Amazing, really, really, really deep work. It's by a guy called John Whittington. He's worth looking up.
Yeah.
He's never done podcasts, by the way. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I
Well,
want him on my one.
yeah.
He's an amazing man, but he trained with the guy called Bert Hellinger, who is the guy behind Family Constellations. And Family Constellations is a therapeutic intervention. And he basically brought all that learning and put it in an organizational context. So literally what you talked about there, who is James at home, and how does he bring, I'm the one who gets the jobs, and I am the same when I'm in the office. So it's that organizational context of it. So it is, yeah, it's fascinating, because I don't know if you saw, I did a bit of a rant during the week about giving out about sport analogies, a metaphorical speak about sport. I love sport. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely thrilled for Rory and the Masters.
Yeah.
But in coaching and in leadership, we over-index on sporting analogies
Sure.
and we ostracize people. So I did a bit of a rant the other day. But
Yeah.
the great thing about families is everyone has one, even if it's
Yes.
complex. Even if it's
Yes.
complex. So it's work that everybody can relate to.
Yes.
Where it becomes a bit more complex is when I do talks in corporate, because everyone's very guarded about their families,
Yeah.
depending
Sure.
on the system,
Yeah.
to talk about who they were in their families. But you'll see the heads nodding. So I
Yeah.
go very gently with it on corporate, but thankfully, now that I'm
Yes.
outside of the halls of corporate, I get to do it strongly in my one-to-ones and in my retreats. I bring it in
Very
my
good.
retreats as well. But yeah, it's a great unifier when everyone feels safe enough to talk about it.
Yes.
But not everyone does. So I'm very
Yeah.
cognizant of that.
That's yeah. No, I didn't. I will look it up afterwards in sense of the rant that you're talking about, because it's an interesting one though, because obviously I think I'm only just about recovered from watching Rory
Rory on Sunday night. It was
on
amazing.
Sunday night. Something else. But you're right though, because in a sense of the use of sporting analogies or sporting experiences, whatever it is, as a sort of, and there is an element of sort of inspiration or motivation and things like that.
Resilience.
But
Oh, it has all
resilience,
of it.
all
It
of
has
those
all of
things.
it.
How,
Yeah.
but it's also that thing of because again previously. As I say, I'm into running and all that sort of stuff,
Triathlons,
and I've
yeah.
done triathlons and I've done long distance type stuff. So years ago, I did like running clubs and stuff like that, and for like couch to 5K, those sorts of things. because I just was into it. And the classic of, oh, but I'm slow, and all this sort of stuff you get from people. And I'd always say, in comparison to who? We're not running with Paul Radcliffe or Mo Farah. When, the thing is, like with someone like Rory did the other day, it's like, it's literally, he's one of now 6 people in the history of the game that have done this. The percentages are so small. It's a great sort of one to show about the inspiration, but it's in some way, it's so far removed. It's like you can take inspiration from it, but there has to be an element of reality as well.
There's pragmatism. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what my point was that how it's sporting language is a language of privilege, because not everyone has access to sport,
Sure.
and also, and it wasn't to dilute or diminish his achievements, because he's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I've often spoken on LinkedIn around like Limerick GA, like are my like big love, and what they've done over the last years in hurling. So I'm checking myself in this conversation as well, and it's more how it's everything you said. Yeah, it's like it's so small, the ability that he did, is we have to have the practicalities of that. It's hugely inspiring because he never gave up, right? I think we'll all take from the message of like, do
100%.
not give up. And what he said to his daughter,
Yes.
like, have your dreams. That's all fabulous. It's when we speak to a room, you and I do talks, you could alienate half the room if you only ever keep to sporting metaphors. So what other metaphors in life can we include here?
Love it.
An international woman that I used to work with, I loved that she gave this one on cooking. She said, somebody said last week, it was like the first pancake, because it's never good, right? So you always have to go for the second pancake. And in French, the French call it the crêpe du chat, which is the cat's crepe. Like it's because you give it to the cat. So it's like, who wants the crêpe du chat? I lived in France, so I have the French love of French language. But yeah, so what other analogies? Because we can still bring in sport, but you have to bring in others. I'm really, really fortunate. I get to do a lot of public speaking, and a lot of my network are, love public speaking. So I was really talking to them on, careful of your analogies, because there's somebody there that's a gardener that doesn't give a crap about Rory's achievement. So how can you, this is this idea of wholeness. I'll always want to I represent the system. When I walk into a system, I represent the heartbeat of the system. And what does the system need? And so I speak from that place often. And there's lots of individuals within that system that I want to include that often get excluded, actually. So I like that idea of this idea of wholeness, that what are we including? I don't like to exclude. Because you and I know what that feels like to be excluded.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing I was, when we go into these sort of using it sort of and it can be an inspiring thing. I'm always of the sort of conscious, in a sense, of the person that it actually disempowers, because they go into this immediate massive comparison thing of like, well, Jesus, what's the point? Because I'm nowhere near that sort of level. And as you say, like, we'll carry on with the example of Rory being like, one of 6 people that have achieved what he was achieved in the game of golf. It's almost like, Jesus, well, what's the point in playing? You know what I mean? You can go to that level, but it's like, I've done this a few times where I've mentioned, my look of it is inspiration, not imitation. It's not trying to be the same as Rory.
It's your authentic way.
Exactly. It's like, well, look what he did to do what he did. What are the sort of traits, or what are the things, or that you, from any sort of walk of life, that you could think, well, how could I employ some of those traits or values into what I'm trying to achieve and hit my whatever it is.
Yeah, one I really witnessed, because I'll always look to the family, how inspired he was by his daughter. I don't know if you saw the push that his daughter did on the Wednesday.
Yes, I did. Yes.
And like how much that meant to him, and how how are we really fueled by and that idea of can I bring it back to those fundamental things of like what's really important here, why, or
Absolutely.
like our why and all of that. But I really get that now that I do a good bit of marketing mentorship.
Mm,
And this summer I'm going to be starting an accelerator program for new entrepreneurs or people due to leave corporate that are starting their own thing, often coaches, breathwork teachers,
mm,
Reiki masters, like similar modalities to myself. And I don't want them to be like me. Like I'm working to what's their authentic voice, where what's their quirks, what are they like, what are they bringing, because you and I have our things that are
mm,
unique to us, and that makes us feel more whole and more resourced. So what are they? Because we could all become an imitation of our
mm,
mentors. um no more than you speaking about that mentor that you had before, you were going to do what was unique to you. And that's where mentorship versus coaching, as we know, I'll always go to be the coach before I'll be the mentor, because you want to dig deep into their why, what motivates them, what's really
mm.
important. I love that question that you said earlier, because we hear it all the time in coaching. What's the point? What's the point? And
Yes.
then really, really getting deeper into really what's the point?
Yeah.
What really is it all about? And working with another I actually end up coaching a lot of coaches because they're really intrigued by what this systemic coaching is.
Mm,
And then they get so much out of it, they come back to me. So I'm really blessed that I work with other coaches. And one woman, I didn't know it, but she had said that she was ready to like close her whole business. She was so disillusioned. She was so under resourced. She was so burnt out, for lots of different reasons. Um, and that when she mapped and when she made the step to better and she remembered all her resources, there was this like kind of eureka moment of, oh, I remember now what my point is. I remember.
mm.
And it's more than a point, it's like a vast ocean.
Yeah.
Not to overwhelm the person, but more the like, oh wow, okay, there's an abundance of things here actually that's really important to me, that I'm no way am I giving up. I am like more
Mm,
than ever focused on my mission. So yeah, I love that question, what's the point?
yeah.
And having, your like I like to have things in front of me. My one, and it was given to me by my dad's partner, and it's go confidently in the direction of your dreams. And that sentence says so much. That idea of like, yeah, stepping into your authority and be confident that your dreams are worth pursuing. And that's Rory McIlroy. There you go. Like,
Mm,
he was
yeah.
never going to give up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's yeah, no, I'm trying to process as I'm listening to you as well at the same time. But there's, it's that thing of when you're thinking of, this is the question I wanted to ask actually, when you're going through the systemic coaching thing and that sort of transition into this type of coaching, if you want to
Mm,
call it, is has the type of person or the client that you're working with, are they different to what you would have had worked with previously?
yeah. Yes and no.
Mm,
Mostly yes. It's much deeper now, and
okay.
they're ready to go deeper. And I suppose even when I started, even when I left corporate 2 years ago, I would have had a
Yeah.
lot of clients that would never have had done any talk
Yes.
interventions, whereas now 90% of my clients are in ongoing therapy.
Okay.
And
Wow.
I often work with the therapist as well.
Very interesting.
So it's a really lovely add-on to therapy.
Mm,
Um, and it is acknowledging there's a therapist at play here and they already might be
mm,
discussing that. So there's sensitivities there but like all coaching, the work will bring them into a forward motion as well.
mm,
It will acknowledge the past and include all of that. But it'll feel very different to therapy. But yet, the ones that are like what I call in marketing terms, my ideal client avatar are somebody who's done it. They've already explored. I don't like that phrase. They've done the work. I don't like that because what
mm.
does that even mean?
Yep.
Um, it's more they've explored a lot about themselves already and are probably
Yeah.
still doing that. And they're ready for a bit of magic and something
Mm,
different. Um, and they're ready to make bold, brave steps.
Love it.
They're probably on the cusp of an ending. So I do a lot of work on endings, and they're ready to step into this threshold. I love thresholds. That's like the work of the transition. So they're in this ending. They need support to finish that ending. Then they step into this transition space, and everyone thinks transitions or thresholds are like lovely spacious spaces, but they're scary as fuck. Like they really are, and they need support.
Yeah.
And the therapy has helped them probably get to this point. But I walk side by side with them into this new beginning and what would resource
Yeah.
them. And that's what complements what I do in both my marketing mentorship as well as my coaching, as well as the retreats I do. So my next retreat is like thresholds to summer, because we're just in that finishing spring and we're just about to step into
Yes.
Bealta now. Um, and we have these choices we can make as we go through the threshold. We can focus on the clearing, and within the clearing, there's loads of possibility. But that could be overwhelming. So let's focus on the fiery arrows. What do we really want from our summer? What are we really, really, really dreaming up? And what are the seeds we're planting? And how would we water them and nourish them? And it's the same if you're leaving a corporate context, which you and I did.
Mm.
Those awkward months when we were like, what the fuck have we done here? Like, what the fuck have we done? Like, we've just left all the stability that we've ever known. We've made these really decisions. And even I, in all my smartness, didn't have enough to resource me. I thought I could do so much on my own, until I got my business coach, until I got my web guy, until I found the tools and resources to support me. I really couldn't do. I was stuck, like I was in a real place of stuckness. So that's what happens in thresholds. They either get stuck in the ending, stuck in the threshold, and they're struggling to start on this new beginning. And that
Mm.
happens in all the seasons, in all the ways,
Yeah.
even within our businesses, like when we're creating new offers, different things. So I'm that person who meets them where they're at, and we walk together into these new beginnings. We close out the endings, we honor what has happened, and we resource for the thresholds and we resource for the beginnings. So that's my favorite work. So the people that tend to be ready for that are, they're still stuck, they still feel under resourced, but they're already whole, like they've got it all going
Yeah.
on. They just need that helping hand, useful hand. See, all our languages are like
Yeah.
help, um, to help move them into these new, it's deeper work, it's energetic work. I would always give people like 30 days between sessions to integrate.
Okay. Wow.
So it's a bit like if you received an energy healing. It's similar language of like rest, be curious, not getting caught up in like the tangible things always, like, oh, that's going to happen next. It like true
Mm.
manifestation doesn't work like that. Just being curious, being like open to signs, and random stuff starts
Mm.
happening them afterwards.
Yeah.
And the ones that really love the work are like, there's a text within 2 days and going, oh, you'll never guess what happened. Like most of my feedback comes in, you'll never guess what happened. And I'm like, oh, go on, try me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Interesting.
energetic work. And I think like I'd have people, currently like a woman who found me through Google, and they come onto the call and they don't know anything about me. And they're just, sometimes it can be like, oh my God, this has opened up to a whole world that I never even knew about.
Mm.
And that can feel overwhelming. What you find is they'll start following me then for a few months, and then they'll come back and I'll hear from them in a few
Yeah.
months. Hence all the things that you and
Yeah.
I do, the podcasts and
Yeah.
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Does you mentioned the word earlier, and this is one of the questions I wanted about belonging. Does
Mm.
through the systemic coaching word, does does identity come up a lot? Because it's one of those things that's kind of, I don't want to use the awfulness of a buzzword, but it's very much in the zeitgeist in a sense of conversation and for so many different contexts in a sense of identity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. In all the contexts, we'll welcome here.
Yeah.
Um, yes, massively, because identity is linked to place, is linked to
Mm.
belonging. It's linked to this orders of love.
Mm.
Who was I? What was the identity and the role I had from a very young age, and how there might be some entanglements stopping me from stepping into the identity I have now. Because in the truest cycle of humanity, you know, we change our whole regeneration of cells every 7 years. So you might feel stuck in an old identity, and you really, really want to move into standing in your authority of this new identity. How do you resource yourself for that? And again, that's very hard to do on your own. So this work helps that, like finding place,
Yeah.
finding direction, finding what would resource you for this new thing that really helps you be authentically you. So, and I'm very cognizant of, you know, I spoke earlier, and I don't want to sound hypocritical, around disorders, but and I know there's a huge rise in, let's say, diagnosis of things, um, and if the identity that will help them be more themselves is that name, well then that's what they need right now. Whether that's, you know, ADHD or and then that's so important, because that means, because they were probably, that was never acknowledged in their life.
Yeah.
It was dismissed. But sure, you know, this awful phrase like, sure, we're all on the spectrum, is very
Yeah.
dismissive of
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
who really, really, really needs to really be seen in that place. So what would help them, their authenticity is a vibration. What would help them be in that then? And where there is spaces where they're not being seen in that.
Yeah.
So you'd work with that, and what they need to do to actually step into that. So we have
Yeah.
this idea of, in person, I have mats, literally like mats, where they step into the identity. And you'll find some of them where they're reluctant to step into it. There might be 1 foot off or 1 foot off. It's like, okay, they're still under resourced. What can we do to see what resources they might need to really step in? And then it's a somatic feeling, and they're stepping in it, and you'll see them, like, their bodies stand taller. Their shoulders are back, their head is up, and they're like, oh my God, this is where I've always meant to be. This is my belonging. This is my identity. So yeah, it's really lovely work, but it's not for me to say. They'll tell me what they need. It's their agenda in that respect. So yeah, if there was a recent diagnosis and they're unsure, but they think it might help them feel more themselves, then yeah, we do a stepping in exercise. Yeah, it's really
Very
beautiful.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very good. You mentioned there a few minutes ago a sort of a phrase that you were talking about there. I think it was to do with courage. I think when you just mentioned a few moments ago. I'll ask again. Those where I ask everyone interested about quotes or phrases. Are there any other ones that are important to you that
Yeah,
help you?
there's a big one at the moment, and it's Theory U. I'm not sure if you've ever come across it. It's that idea of let go to let come. So it's all, a big piece of threshold work is surrendering
Yeah.
and letting go.
Yes.
Which is ironic that we've just come from the identity thing, because sometimes
Yeah.
we can grasp at something,
Yes.
in the thinking that will help us, when actually it's the surrendering. And that's what I invite my clients to do after the session ends, to surrender. It doesn't Surrendering and letting go doesn't mean inaction. There can be loads of action in surrender, but it's a trust and it's a knowing. I see surrendering and letting go as two different things, actually. Surrender is a more of a being, and a letting go is more like if there was a gripping, it is a somatic move.
Yeah.
Letting go is somatic, whereas surrendering is a being thing. Because when we do, that's when things that we really want come in. And I think I did that in corporate this time 2 years ago, when I was, in a process of leaving, and really getting overly attached to the outcome I wanted, versus it was like just trusting it was coming. It was so not how I thought it would end. It wasn't how I imagined it or wanted to manifest it. Far from it. But I did get the outcome I wanted. So there, there's so much trust, especially you and I made very brave decisions when we left our corporate roles to do what we do. So what we can do then, we might overly index on what we have, versus if you said to me this time last year, Norma, you'd be stepping into your first marketing and systemic coaching accelerator and you're designing that now, I'd be like, no way, I hate marketing. So I've had to kind of let go of what I thought my business was going to be. And people, like the first marketing masterclass I did, 22 people showed up. I barely advertised it. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
Okay. This is what I need.
Yes.
And it was a moment of like just the unexpected. This again, thresholds, the clearing. You don't know, like you just don't know what's going to evolve from you making the move to make more space in your life. And I say that in a way of like not just about my business. Like I say it in a like my whole life. Never thought even a few years ago I'd end up having to have a hysterectomy. Like I've had to have more surgeries. I thought I'd drawn a line through like health issues. Health is something that comes up again and again for me. I even had a really rough start to this year with my health, and they're happening for a reason, you know. And if I less attach myself to that and go, there was something there for me to learn and grow, and not shame myself for not, you know, meet that with a lot of compassion of like, there's a signal. So yeah, let go to let come, and see what happens. I think it's really it's what I need right now for me.
No, I love that. And what you were just saying there as well, and the example you gave there about how things will come up that you don't expect as such, or things, the outcome wasn't what you thought. And say like the marketing example there you gave there, to do a marketing class, and that wasn't something that was potentially even on your radar. It's that, and this is where I think in the going back to the words you said a few times, in a sense of, but the resourcefulness about remembering. And there's an element of, sometimes I think we can allow ourselves to either forget or dismiss what we find innately normal to ourselves. The skills of the things, because that is your life. So I'll give you, like you said, it was like, because you did marketing for 22 years, it's almost like, well, I'm not, you know, it's almost like you just almost downplayed it so much, but everyone's like, no, but we really need the marketing. I'll give an example for myself. So as I briefly said earlier, so I was originally born in Germany, in near Mönchengladbach. So I grew up on a British military base. My parents lived there for 21 years. So I lived there on the base. I then went to university in Liverpool. I met my better half, and my other, she's from Kildare, and I've moved over to Ireland. I've lived in Ireland in 4 different places around Dublin, and now in Mullingar. So travelled, or didn't move with my dad. We stayed in the one place, in the one base, but people came and go, you know, people moved in and out, and I've you know, traveled everywhere around the world. It's like, to me, I could literally probably live anywhere, like in a sense of, I'm comfortable with what I am. I'm delighted at where I am now. You know, the whole thing of like moving from Dublin down to Mullingar, it was, oh yeah, let's do that. And then I meet people who've never moved, you know, them going from Mullingar to Bundoran is like is like the biggest journey they've ever made. Yeah, exactly. So one of the things I kind of forget is my ability to be comfortable pretty much wherever I am. I'll talk to anyone, talk to any stranger. I'll do it in muddled English. I'll try whatever. My sort of inability not to be scared of where I am in the world, because it's just, that was just my life. I forget. So we forget, we downplay these skills.
We even dismiss it. We
100%.
Dismissive of ourselves. So
100%.
how can you now remember your resilience, your ability to, you can regulate yourself anywhere, James. That's a huge skill.
Exactly. And so I think that's the one thing from there's people, if they're listening to this, there's something that's innate about them that they're either ignoring, dismissing, or forgotten about. And hopefully one of the things they might take from this is going, oh, well, actually, you know what? Because they'll. I remember even when I say like to people, I'm always like I've tried it so many times to learn a musical instrument and time and commitment, all that sort of stuff. And then I'll be chatting to someone and they'll say, oh, is there anything like hobbies? And say, oh, well, I'm a grade 9 the piano. And you're just like, what? Again, it's this sort of like, there's something going to be, and it might not be something as specific as that, but that they'll have something. You think you're downplaying this so much. It's such
Yeah. And it's a great way.
you,
Do you know a great exercise I get with my clients, and I really get
love
it
it.
with the marketing clients, is text 3 really good friends that are non-judgmental, who will reflect, and ask them, what do you know me for? Like, who am I
Mm,
to you? Who am I to you? And allowing them, and that's, I say text because if you say it to their face, they might people please and they might say
yeah.
something else. But you're like, really, really ask them, like, what do you know me for? Like, what would you say about me? I remember I did it years ago for a dating profile, and 2 out of the 3 friends came back and said quirky. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And like, that's not to be dismissed. I am different. Hence my business name, Beyond the Norm. Like, and I was dismissing that part of me, to fit
Yes.
in, you know,
Yes.
to fit
Yes.
in. Whereas now I'm like, let's go all out on this. Not all out on it, because Beyond the Norm
Yeah.
can be uncomfortable sometimes too. There's a people pleaser within me as well. Um, um, but yeah, what you said there is so spot on. It is that idea of like really, really, really remembering all the parts of who I am, and
Mm,
like you've no idea how many people dismiss so much what you and I go, like, sorry, James, you do triathlons. I can't even walk like
yeah.
beyond 10K. That,
Yeah.
like, phenomenal thing to do in
Yes.
your life, that you could just go, but sure, everyone does triathlons. Is it like 1% of the world runs, 1% of the
Yeah.
world does marathons, 1%
Yeah.
of that probably does triathlons?
Yeah.
Like, the people that are doing high rocks now, I'm just like, oh my God, they're
Yeah. Yeah.
insane. Your Karina
Yeah.
Duffys
Yeah.
and all our pals, that we know
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
common,
Yeah.
that you're like,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like that is incredible endurance,
Yeah.
resilience, like
It's
holding firm in something that
yeah.
should be triumphed. Like, why are you not talking about that?
Yeah. It's a funny one because say like it's been it's when I say it's gas when I'm checking myself now as I say because it's been I did the London Marathon 2 years ago, just coming
Nice.
up, and then before that, just again through life and stuff, I was COVID. Obviously, was the first thing,
Mm,
and kind of stepped away from doing. I was doing 2 or 3 events a year and things like that, and obviously, it was trying to move into the business and things like that. But it's funny actually with reflection now. I know I massively appreciate it. I know when made it a deliberate, conscious decision that when I was doing the triathlons that I really did enjoy it and I did acknowledge it because initially I wasn't probably the very start because it was the focus was the completion of it and because I did Ironman which is the endurance triathlon so it's the
amazing.
140
They're
mile
insane.
race
Insane.
yeah
You're
and the
insane.
first one yeah there's an element of that and the first one I failed like you because you have to meet time cutoffs and stuff so the
Yeah.
first one I did
Yeah.
I missed the bike cutoff so when I went to the second time in a different location it was in Spain in Barcelona um it was that funny feeling, and since I had them, but that day especially, that morning, I say the thing is like I knew that day. It was just like I knew I was going to. I was always ahead. I was like, I am an Ironman. I just have to just. This just is the confirmation of it. It was one of those really moments in life when I was just like, I am just completely in it.
Did you see what you
Complete.
said there? That's
Mm,
going back to our identity conversation.
mm,
I am an
mm,
Iron Man. So
yeah,
you had an all body feeling. It wasn't just your mind, your
100%.
heart, your
Yeah,
gut,
everything.
your all your brains knew I am, right? So
Mm,
that's where, like, identity is brilliant.
mm,
So like, I am statements are really powerful in systemic coaching. I
mm,
am, um, and though, like, there is the identity one, like, that is a brilliant
yeah.
one. Your whole body, it was
It's
a whole body knowing you
yeah.
were going, it was there already. It already
Absolutely.
happened.
Yeah.
It was done.
Yes. 100%. And it's actually now that because I'm so glad I went into it because that that's saying that's so that you just said that I am, and then whatever it is afterwards. You think it again, it sounds so simple, but I'm sure there's people like the mat thing you were saying about people wanting to step onto it, because it's saying it out loud
for your body to
is,
hear it, though. Because
yeah.
it's one thing for your
You
mind to
just
hear
say
it,
it.
but actually, how does that feel in your heart to say it, right? And we'll
Yeah.
check that. And whether it's a lightness or a heaviness, right? So we probably feel in those two somatic senses. When it comes to something like that, then it's sometimes it is acknowledging the feeling, even if it's not the perfect feeling. Like
Mm,
I was really, really uncomfortable only this time last year saying I'm a systemic coach. I was really
mm,
uncomfortable. I was really uncomfortable. I had to step into that.
yeah.
Um, because I thought I'll be alienated. Nobody will know what I am, what I do. And now I just choose the rooms that I say it in.
Yes.
That and it's because it's not about me, it's about the audience, it's about who's in the room.
Yeah.
um but yeah, I am statements are really powerful. Where they become complexes around the disorder thing, you know.
Yes.
Like the identity with the disorder. Anxiety is one that really, really, like,
Yeah.
you feel, anxious.
Yes.
um
Exactly.
but
Yeah.
yeah, so there's certain things around that the nuances really
And
show up in the body. They really show up.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's because yeah, it is, and I think that's where the whole thing of the identity thing really does interest me, because I say there's so much in relation to it in so many contexts at the moment regarding the world, in the sense of whether it be gender identity, whether it be political identity, whether it be national identities,
Pronouns, all of that. Yeah.
all of these things, and it's
Yeah.
like um, and it's like the level of my own sort of education or ignorance in relation to it, and wanting to learn more and
Mm.
know more, and having that sort of non-judgmental space, and but then trying to sort of, there's a practicality and a pragmatism. There's all these things. It's so
And the
complex. You can't do
intentionality. Yeah, it is. It is. And
100%.
and 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 James, we're human and we're gonna fuck it up.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm sure I've said some things on this podcast that will trigger people, right? So
Yeah,
it's the humanity of it, and the
100%.
pure intentionality behind, we're going to get it wrong. We're going to fuck it up. We're
Yeah,
going to fuck up
yeah,
identity. Um, I think, you and I lay openness for humanity, where we don't in political terms. I was mad with a politician yesterday around free HRT, because it's a joke. It's not free HRT, because it's going to be a huge cost to the local chemists. And I can get really like, in on someone, and then I'm like, oh, she's somebody's daughter,
yeah.
she's somebody's mom. And look, there's exceptions to that. There's the real true narcissists and psychopaths.
Mm,
But if you and I stepped into the identity of the Dalai Lama, like, who would the other person be in front of us? As well. My 11:11 alarm just went off there,
nice.
to remind me to pause. So yeah, there's something around how can you be okay in your
Yeah,
own humanity when it comes to identity, because
yeah,
we're all learning. We're not always going to get it right.
yeah,
And we're nearly apologetic in advance, but we might be too apologetic for our own selves already. So there, we're incorrectly
yeah,
sizing ourselves there as well.
yeah.
Um,
Goes back to that.
yeah, I think when the other person sees you as a full human in front of you, we're curious then to learn more. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also as well the last piece on this. I think because we're is also, there's an element we could be just seeing it through a 60-second clip, or as a clip, a 10-second of out of context or
Yes.
specific, and there is an element, if you find yourself going down the wormhole of content of two massively opposing people trying to prove to the other one that they're in the right and you're in the wrong. So if we only see these massively polarizing people who are never going to, it's not, I love the phrase at the moment, oh, we just need to have an open debate and conversation. But we're really,
But
the
even the
people who are
debate,
never going to, yeah, exactly. The debates aren't debates. It's just arguments, because
yeah,
it's never a
good for
debate.
listenership. It's not a true,
100. It's not
like
a
I'm really saddened by even Diary of a CEO. He's
yeah.
gone
Oh
kind of
yeah,
down
yeah,
the clickbait
yeah.
kind of clickbait route of debates. And he had one of those recently, and you're like, that's not pleasant listening for anyone.
No,
Like, I'm not
yeah.
learning where I want to learn, and I want to
It's
be curious on both sides. If anything, I had to I had to stop listening to some of those because
yeah,
they were just so frustrating. It was just pure
yeah,
clickbait for sensationalism. So where do we get our source of truth now?
yeah,
And our bodies have a lot of truth in picking up the emotional cues
yeah.
of like, this feels really not nice,
Yes,
or I'm really interested to learn more, and I'm open, and yeah. And
yeah.
that's why I think you can't beat the in person for this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it kind of maybe, I think, because I kind of feel that as well a little bit there when you're just seeing the argument, because going back to that words of definitely usefulness more so than helpful, but the useful, because we have that within ourselves that we want to be useful. I'm like, well, this isn't useful to anyone. Where's the sort of conversation to come towards a solution, to come towards an agreement, to come towards a compromise, to come towards, we can argue and argued. There was I can't remember the name of again, it was a clip I seen a comedian. I can't remember his name now. It was like on a BBC Radio 4 sort of podcast. And he was talking about one of the politicians, Mr. Farage, and he said, well, he's like a doctor that just diagnoses. He could tell you everything that's wrong, but there's no treatment.
Solution.
There's no solution. So we're in a space where we can point everything out that's wrong, but is there a lack of, well, actually, what's the solution that helps and enables everyone, as opposed to the
And
one
this
or
is
the other.
yeah. I think we're in a time of meta crisis, right?
Mm,
And I'm part of a beautiful group that it's called Courageous Conversations in a Time of Meta Crisis. And that idea that you and I can have a courageous conversation um, and hope something will come out of it, but like hope is too light. What's the balance of some action but not like hopeful action as opposed to hopelessness action? Like I go out and I
mm,
pick rubbish on my really, really polluted beach in front of me, and you're like, I come back the next day and it's worse again. Where do I look at the source of the rubbish? Is coming from the sea. It's not people dropping it per se on a walk. So it's bigger problems at play, and then sometimes we might feel really small in a big pond. So um what is that balance of a little bit of action, a little bit of courageous conversations? You and I are not politicians. I don't know about you, but I
mm.
don't aspire to be.
No.
But how can we help the person and be useful to the person in front of us
Yes.
to resource to help for them to discover their own resources to do some courageous work?
Love it.
And
Yeah.
I think it has to start there because when it comes to meta crisis and your Farage diagnosing crisis within crisis, whatever you focus on grows.
Yeah.
So what are we choosing to focus on?
Exactly.
The crisis or the humanity that is
Mm,
part of the solution?
mm.
I'm always going
Absolutely.
to choose humanity over and
Yeah.
actually bring it down to the human in front of me, to you, James. And
Yeah.
this podcast is those
Yeah.
courageous
Yeah.
conversations of
Yeah.
humanity where we're going to get it wrong sometimes,
Yeah.
and what a huge resource you are giving to your listeners in these conversations. So we start there. That's where we
Absolutely.
start.
That went so far away different, which is brilliant. We'll get to my next question now, which is, who have been the biggest influences, would you say, in your life?
It will come back to the family.
Mm,
I often speak about my mother, who has passed, but I want to include and remember my dad as well. Yeah, yeah. They both grew up in a time of nothingness. Like Ireland, they were both born in the 40s, post-war babies, boomers. They both came from big families. They both have, and I talk about my mother often in present tense, even though she's passed. They both have a really, really, really resilient way of living, and really always wanting to do the better thing for their families, for their communities they've both been involved in. My mother moved kind of like yourself a little, in her from her teens to her. She was from Kilkenny and she ended up living in Limerick, and she lived in London and Dublin and all that beforehand. But kind of like you would have dismissed her resilience,
Mm.
for all that she had. My father the same. He was one of 12. They absolute survival, to thrive, and he's still the most optimistic man ever. Like when it comes to building better, bigger, that has its pros and cons, but like he really has that desire. He rings me a lot and asks me how's business, which is brilliant and annoying
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
But he's so driven, even in his 70s, like he's still working.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I really admire his drive and his passion for life. He's a real, in French we say bon vivant, and he loves his food, he loves life, he loves people, he loves his community. He's the proudest Limerick man that ever was. I was with him when Limerick won that first All Ireland. In like my whole lifetime, I never had one.
Yeah.
I must have been, I think I was 40, and like he cried, like
Yeah.
when, and he did actually say like I could die happy now, so like just those meaningful things. He's become a softer man than when he was quite
Mm.
strict on us as teenagers and as children, but his grandchildren have really softened him, and my mother's death has softened him. He's met an amazing partner now who we all really love, and she's a huge addition to our now rainbow family. And I'm good friends with her children as well. So, and we would have worried a lot about him after my mother died, but he has,
Mm.
a real ability just to get up and get on, and let go, let come. And
Yeah.
yes, I have really, two of my parents have been a huge fundamental resource for me starting my business. And my mum, behind me here, watches over me every day to, I can have chats with her to kind of when it's hard, because let's just face
Mm.
it, it's
Yep.
not all rainbows and unicorns in our world.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
they've been a huge drive for me, a huge
Yeah.
resource. And yes, I've had amazing mentors along the way, so many, so many, but it will always come back to actually,
Yeah.
you know
Then
your parents are going to be your parents for the rest of
yeah.
your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Because it was made me thinking there because my father passed away coming up 4 years this year. Yeah, 4 years in
Sorry, James.
September. Yeah, and it was obviously he's still always going through those things, and it's funny that because obviously he was his profession, he was a social worker and mental health expert, and did a lot with child protection, and then towards the end of his career, he was helping servicemen and women leave the forces through mental discharge. Effectively, they
Mm,
could no
mm,
longer be service
mm.
personnel because of um, whatever sort of mental disorders or challenges and stuff they were going through. So he was kind of helping them transition from
He was
military to
working
civilian
through
lives.
their thresholds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And so he's like, so when I was moving into this sort of world, I was always sort of questioning him, tapping him up and stuff, and that, like,
Mm.
and that. So it's funny when you're just saying about talking your mother there. It's like I kind of almost like have him coach me, if that makes sense. In my world, it does. Do you
It
know what I mean? I kind of
absolutely
go, well,
does in
what would
my
he
world.
say in that to that?
Yeah, he's a huge resource
What
too.
would he have said that? Yeah, even now I'm like, what would he say or do? And because he had an element of very similar in the sense of there was a thinking element, but very much he was very practical,
Mm,
and
mm.
he was very much a doer as well, and the
Yeah.
practical side. So that was it's interesting how we tap into what we can, and that comes back to the whole start of this conversation of that wholeness and not ignoring all of those potential things that can resource you.
Remembering, so
Yeah,
think of the word to remember,
yeah,
remembering
yeah,
your dad. Where it becomes complex is we have some blind loyalties to their way of working, which don't
yeah,
no longer serve us as well as
yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
Everything
yeah,
is
yeah.
and yes,
Well,
and
yeah,
it's that
yeah,
idea, where I work with my own constellations and supervisories, and because my parents both came from, I won't say poverty, they were probably, depending on what part of their lives, I'd say early on in their lives, that things were really hard. So I have some loyalties to them on being impoverished. Or my whole generation, right, in Ireland, we've got famine right in our long line. So we can overly identify with not having enough. So I think of my mother who's passed. I do believe in an afterlife. I absolutely do. And that she's only anything but abundance now at her disposal. So how can I tap into her new way of being, actually, to help support me, that there's an infinity and a quantum and a layers upon layers and layers of possibilities for me, as opposed to going, oh God, no. In her living, in her 3D living, was very like, oh God, no, you wouldn't want to waste that now. Like not necessarily, so it's yeah, they're both living and dead. They will always be our teachers, and
Yeah.
and remembering their highest self, so their best selves on their best
Yeah.
days, can be a huge
Yeah.
resource for our businesses and who we are. Yeah,
Yeah.
beyond, all of
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah. Norma, it's been an absolutely amazing conversation, and I've loved every minute of it, and we could do the same amount of time again, I'm sure. But we'll wrap it up there for today, and hopefully we will chat again. But I have one more question for you before I let you go, and that is, what's important for your future?
It is something around resourcing. I have an inner knowing that I will have someone by my side. I've been alone a lot in my life, and it's about stepping into that place that there'll be a togetherness. There'll be somebody walking by my side that believes in me, that I can lean in on. I've never really had that at an intimate level, and although it's not an everyday focus. It's, but when you said, like, I am an Iron Man before you come, I'm a part of someone else's life on a more permanent basis than I've ever been. And that is outside of my job, because I know when I'm feeling held, because I hold everyone else. So when I'm being held, I'm capable of amazing things. But actually, that lovely, that's why I set my alarm a few times a day. I do a body movement of leaning into something, because I've never had that in my life. So yeah, I've said it on a few other podcasts in 2025, and I think I stand in that place, and that vulnerable, it's a really vulnerable place.
Yeah.
I could be 70 before he comes along. But I am really open now to feel held, actually. Something that's never happened in my life, really at a really true deep level, and seeing him as an equal, and not ever having to be, I might have been that girlfriend that rescued in the past. I'm just done with that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have pure equality in a relationship, and really curious on who he is. He's coming.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Norma. Before I do let you go, we will have where you can all reach out and contact, follow
Yes.
Norma in the show notes. But if you would like to just give a shout out now where people can connect and follow you.
Yeah, I think my two daily go-tos are Instagram, Norma O'Kelly Systemic Coach, and Norma O'Kelly on LinkedIn. I'm there daily.
Brilliant.
And my own podcast is Beyond the Norm. Like you, James, I go through cycles of doing loads and doing, but I've a good few new episodes about to drop at the moment.
Brilliant.
But yeah, it's been, you and I have very, very similar trajectories in terms of starting our businesses, and knowing some amazing people in common. So thank you, James. I was really, really honored that you asked me to come on to the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Best of luck. Thanks for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if it resonated, share it with someone who might need it too. I'd love to hear your thoughts, leave a comment or ask a question, and let's keep the conversation going. I'm James Dean, and I'll be back soon with another real conversation to help you reconnect with what truly matters. Until then, take care and stay curious.